Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Reign of Troy Radio, episode 465, coming to you on Wednesday, November 30th. We are going to talk about the Pac-12 Championship Game. Yes, the Pac-12 Championship Game. Not Saturday. It's Friday. It's a short week.
It's Friday.
Friday nights.
Again. Saturday,
Sunday,
Sunday, what?
Yeah. Friday night, 5 p.m. on Big Fox, USC and Utah. The Trojans and the Utes once again meeting for a Pac-12 championship this time around. It should be a fun one in Las Vegas. We're going to preview it, give you our predictions, talk about some over-under, and so much more here on this episode, including the Trojans' quest to go to the playoff, college football playoff. For real.
What a world.
Always, I know, it's insane. As always, you can follow us on social media. We're at Reign of Troy on Twitter and Facebook. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We are there. Our email address is reignoftroy@fanside.com. I'm your host, Michael Castillo, joined along with my co-host, Alicia Deratola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, we are back. It is the biggest week of the year. We've talked about that for 3 straight weeks, but legitimately the biggest week of the year, is it not?
Dare I say, the biggest week of the decade?
So we were having this discussion with our buddy Kenny from Traveler Hates Thursdays. He asked us the other day, like, this is the biggest SC game since what? Realistically, my answer was the Cotton Bowl, right? Like, the Cotton Bowl was a huge game a couple years ago against Ohio State. But, like, in terms of national title significance, this is the biggest game. Friday night will be the biggest game in USC football history since 2006. The game that ended with a score that people don't like to hear at the Rose Bowl against a certain team,
where one game was going to put you into
the
game or the games.
Right.
Yeah.
If SC went into the Rose Bowl and did not win against UCLA, they are in the national championship game.
Yeah.
They lost that one. Now here we are 16 years later. SC has a chance to get into the college football playoff. This is how big of a moment that is. It is absolutely insane to think that this is where USC is in year one, but they are right here in year one. Let's just get right into it and just go right into the news. Shall we? We got to start with the rankings. SC is number 4 in the college football playoff rankings, number 4 in the AP poll. The Trojans ahead of Ohio State. The Buckeyes lost the game last week against Michigan. Lost it pretty soundly, actually. I thought they were completely outplayed in that game. Crumbled in the second half, and they fall down to number 5. SC is now in the position to win and get into the playoff. The number 1 seed currently is Georgia. Number 2 is Michigan, who beat Ohio State last week. Number 3, TCU. The Horned Frogs play Kansas State on Saturday in the Big 12 championship game. And then SC sitting at number 4. As it stands now, if the college football playoff started tomorrow, SC and Georgia would be playing in the Peach Bowl, which is bad news considering that game would be in Atlanta.
Yeah.
I don't like. Obviously, it would be good news because SC's in the playoff, but
Yeah.
playing Georgia in Atlanta, probably the last thing you want. But
I mean,
it's something.
The silver lining to that would be playing Georgia in Atlanta would take a lot of the stress away, because it would just be like you're playing with house money. Like, you're probably going to get blown out. Anyone in that situation is going to get blown out. So just like play with house money and see what happens with no expectations.
Just hope that you're better than 49-3.
Yeah, pretty much.
Sure.
Yeah.
But you know, the committee has talked about that this week still matters, that the games here are bonus games, even though Ohio State is on the outside looking in. They would still like SC or TCU to lose and hopefully back into the playoff discussion. It would be interesting if that happened, because you have pointed out plenty of times this week that Dan Wetzel over at Yahoo has talked about it shouldn't matter. None of these games should matter this week, because if SC, TCU, Michigan, or Georgia loses and you penalize them by dropping any of those 4 teams out of the playoff, you're penalizing them for playing a 13th game. A 13th game that Ohio State didn't get the chance to play in, that Alabama won't get the chance to play in.
Yeah, and for TCU and USC, it's a 13th game. Well, and I guess Georgia, 13th game against a ranked opponent. In USC's case, a highly ranked opponent in number 11 Utah. And so, like, I think it's a really valid argument. I think it's a sound argument. I think it's a fair argument. I also don't think the committee is going to give a crap about it. Like, the committee is not going to give a crap about fairness in that sense. The problem that I see is that if USC had 2 losses, even though they played 13 games, if USC had 2 losses, then it would be a question of USC's 2 losses were both to Utah. And what I think is going on right now with USC being ahead of Ohio State is the committee giving a nod to the fact that Ohio State lost to Michigan by a wide margin. They got their socks blown off in the second half. And that was even though it was a good loss in the sense of to a very highly ranked team, it wasn't an impressive loss in the sense that they really got dominated at a certain point in that game. Whereas USC has their 1 loss on the road by 1 point with questionable reffing decisions that I think anyone with eyes could look at and say, like, well, that was kind of rough on USC. In a game that really felt like anybody could have won, depending on how long the game was going to go. Like, you end the game a minute earlier and USC wins. You end the game a minute later, USC might win. You know, it was such a toss-up kind of game that I think the committee is giving USC a nod there, saying, we think if given a second chance at Utah, you will beat Utah. But if USC loses to Utah on a neutral field in game 2, then that means that Utah is better than USC or does have USC's number. At which point you reevaluate the 1 loss between USC and Ohio State, and Ohio State's looks better in certain sense, because now you've proven that USC validly or straight up, without sort of the question marks that were around that game, lost to Utah. Does that make sense in terms of like a logical?
Are you saying that you think that that it's easier to punish SC because theoretically that second loss in that scenario would be against the same team?
Yes. Because theoretically, it means that USC doesn't get the benefit of the doubt of, oh, it was a 1-point loss on the road. Suddenly it's no longer a 1-point loss on the road. It's like, no, you got two chances at Utah and they beat you both times. Like,
yeah, but the flip side is, what excuse does Ohio State have against losing to Michigan? And the other side of this is,
don't.
When you talk about just sheer wins, and because this is the thing that I think the committee has talked about a fair bit, not just this year, but for the last few years, they care about wins. And when you look at who teams have beat, SC has beaten a ton of teams in the top 25 now. UCLA is there. Oregon State is now in the top 15. Notre Dame is there. If SC beats Utah again, or sorry, not again, for the first time this year, that's another team there. Ohio State doesn't have all those ranked wins, save for beating Penn State. Like, they don't have the series of games, especially on the bounce here in November when things matter, even more than anything else, that SC does right now. So I get the argument either way. I think that if anything, if you were going to say that if Ohio State had a legitimate argument for the committee, then they should put them 4 this week and SC 5.
That's fair. I agree with what
they
Kenny
didn't. At this point, puts it in a position where I have a hard time rationalizing how you take SC out, and I'm sort of on the Dan Wetzel side, even if I don't think that logic has to track.
Yeah, and like I said, I think Dan Wetzel. Sorry, it's Dan Woken. I think.
I think both Dans.
Did both Dans make it? I think their argument is, like I said, it's sound. It's a really sound argument. I just think that the committee will put a 1-loss Ohio State in over a 2-loss USC just without considering all of that other stuff. I just think that's the way it's going to go. I agree. In the end, the way that this discussion sort of ends for me is, I think Kenny put it perfectly in the chat. If USC can't beat Utah in 2 tries, they should not be in the playoff. So if USC can't beat Utah in 2 tries, you don't get to complain if the committee leaves you out of the playoff.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Could we make an argument that USC should be? Yes. Could we make an argument that Ohio State isn't as worthy as USC? Absolutely. Depending on how the other dominoes fall, if TCU loses, or shockingly, if Purdue pulls off an upset on Michigan, or if Purdue makes life hard for Michigan, if Michigan struggles against Purdue, and then you get into all sorts of other questions about how good is that win anyways, because Michigan doesn't have much of a resume either. Like, there's a million factors that go in, but when it comes down to it, if you cannot beat Utah the second time, then you are not a championship level team that can win 2 games in the playoff. So don't waste anybody's time.
Yeah, no, that's fair too. That is absolutely fair too. All these arguments, I think, could have some logical element to them for sure. I think it's going to be interesting to see what does happen on Friday and Saturday and eventually Sunday morning. And the other thing too is what happens. I think the perfect scenario for SC here is not only winning, but somehow not being the 4 seed, right? Like,
yes,
because if SC is able to somehow play TCU or Michigan in this game, and in the playoff, I think that changes things too. But what is it going to take to get there? I don't exactly know. Outside of those teams just losing on Saturday, so we'll see. We'll see how that comes to be.
There's a very, very, very narrow argument that if USC blows out Utah and TCU struggles and like wins at the last minute against Kansas State, that maybe you flip the 3 and the 4. I don't personally see it. I think it would be a stronger argument actually if Michigan was the 3 and TCU was the 2 and Michigan struggled against Purdue. Then I think you could start having that conversation. Because the argument you have against Ohio State with regard to USC is kind of similar to Michigan. Michigan only has that Ohio State win. They don't really have anything else. So yeah, it's all speculative, and we'll find out on Friday.
But the Ohio State win is pretty huge for Michigan.
Yes. Honestly, absolutely. Yes.
Honestly, I sort of expected Michigan to go number 1.
I thought there was a chance. Except that the rest of their resume doesn't really add up, and Georgia is the defending champion, and I'll give that nod to Georgia.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into talking about this game. Before we get into really quick, All-Americans named by PFF that came out today, Wednesday.
They're early with this. I like
it. The first team, SC has 3 of them: Caleb Williams, Andrew Voorhees, and really quick, guess off the top of your head. No, Kalen Bullock. And, not a knock on Kalen Bullock. I just did not expect it.
If you had told me USC would have 2 players on offense and 1 on defense, for this All-American team, I probably would have been able to guess Caleb Williams and Andrew Voorhees.
Yeah.
And I absolutely would have said Tuli Tuipulotu, and it would not have been close. But it's Kalen Bullock. And there's a lot of people asking why. The why to me is because PFF is a unique selector. PFF is basing it off of their season-long rankings, which they are doing game-by-game analysis throughout the season. So Tuli Tuipulotu leads the nation in sacks. We all know that I've been saying on Twitter all day, like, he's going to be an All-American. He's going to get in on some selector. But when it comes to PFF, if he was going to get left off for anybody, and if Kalen Bullock was going to get on with anybody, it was going to be through PFF, because so much of it is just based around their metrics. So Tuli Tuipulotu maybe had too many games where he didn't have a sack, and then that's sort of knocking him. Also, it's entirely possible that some of the other defensive linemen that were selected for that thing just had ridiculous scores throughout the season. So that's it. It's just the nuance of PFF. They're a unique selector. I like that PFF selects a team because it allows guys like Ronald Jones to get an All-American nod when they deserve it. And wouldn't necessarily get it from the traditional selectors. And so I really appreciate them. Kalen Bullock definitely fits into one of those, though I would have never thought that he would get. He doesn't have the profile. He doesn't have the stats. I mean, he's got 5 interceptions, but like he would need 10 to get a traditional selector to pay attention to him on that defense. But this is why PFF it's sort of a cool alternate nod that you get. And also, like, I just like to point out, USC now officially has 3 All-Americans selected this year. 3 of those names will go on the All-American wall. I think you and I both agree Tuli Tuipulotu will go up as well. So that's a minimum of 4 All-Americans for USC this season. USC had 4 All-Americans in total between 2017 and 2021, and 2 of those were both in, half of those came in 2017. They're going to have 4 alone this year. The last time they had 4 or more in a season was in 2007 when they had 5. And just because I spent the majority of Tuesday arguing with people on Twitter about why USC was successful this season, and there were a lot of Utah fans and Oregon fans and other fans in my mentions talking about how, well, USC bought their team. USC is only NIL. USC is only transfer portal, blah, 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 blah. I would just like to point out, USC is going to have 4 All-Americans this season at a minimum. 3 of the 4 were not transfers into USC. 3 of the 4 are quote-unquote homegrown players. 3 of the 4 are players who were on last year's team, who played and started for USC last year. And now they have come into their own. They have unlocked something special, and that has helped USC win football games. And I don't think we talk enough. I'll let you get a word in here in a second, but I don't think we talk enough about USC's offensive line. USC's offensive line has been banged up for much of the season. They have had to shuffle to different fives in the middle of games. Mason Murphy has had to come in and play significant time at left tackle, arguably the most important position on a field next to the quarterback. And USC's offensive line has performed beautifully this year. And Andrew Voorhees is a very worthy All-American choice. That is a credit to Josh Henson. That is a credit to all of those players who have risen up and stepped up and done what they've done what they've been needed of. Like, the development on this team is underrated. That's all I'm saying. It's not just the transfers. The transfers are huge. Don't get me wrong, but it's not just the transfers.
Yeah, I have questions about PFF in general.
I mean, it's not a perfect. It's certainly not a perfect selector.
I like the idea of PFF. I don't always agree with PFF's things, but I think that SC getting the recognition is great, and I think that you point out the homegrown talent there, and then that is I think a very telling thing that so many of SC's star players on this team are not the transfer portal guys. It reminds me of the 90s, and it's easy to point at Caleb Williams and say, oh, they're all NIL transfer guys, blah, 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 blah. Well, look at the 90s when the Yankees were winning all those World Series. What was the backbone of that team? Jeter, homegrown. Bernie Williams, homegrown. Mariano Rivera, homegrown. Andy Pettit, homegrown. Jorge Posada, homegrown. Like, you go down the list.
You have to have a core.
That core was homegrown. The Kings, when they won with the Lombardi era Kings in 2012 and 2014, homegrown, right up the middle, right up the spine. And SC is homegrown on that offensive line.
In the trenches.
You can talk about Bobby Haskins, but Bobby Haskins is a guy who hasn't played for the entire season, every single snap. He's one of those left tackles who's been in and out. And look at USC's offensive line. These are the numbers. The Trojans in line yards, number 1 in the nation.
You gotta love it.
Standard line yards, number 1 in the nation. Pass downs, line yards, number 1. Sorry, 38th minute. 38th. Sorry.
Only 38th.
Yeah. Sorry. I was getting ahead of myself because opportunity rates, number 1 in the country. Power success rate, number 2. Stuff rate, number 3. This is an elite offensive line. Absolutely. Yes. This is the best offensive line that SC has had said Sam Baker was anchoring this thing.
Yes. And
Full stop.
It's worth pointing out that like there are so many things that go into this. Number one, you need to have the guys there, and USC has the guys there getting the job done. Number two, you have to have a scheme that gives them a chance.
That I think is a huge thing. They have a scheme that is working in their favor.
Yes. And how often in the past years before this, were we talking about how like the scheme is not helping any of these offensive linemen?
Yes.
They're asking guys to pull who aren't good at pulling, or they're asking guys to block, one-on-one with, have Brett Nealon go one-on-one for an entire game with, who was the nose tackle from BYU that just gave me nightmares?
Kyrus Tonga.
Tonga. All of that kind of stuff, obvious run plays, everything like that. It was just annoying, but you see what these guys can do when they're given a platform upon which to succeed. And guess what? They're taking their opportunity to succeed.
Yeah.
And it's a huge plus to Henson and Lincoln Riley and to each one of these because, and I put this on Twitter, like Andrew Voorhees, when he came in a recruiting class where I think it was 4 or 5 really highly touted offensive linemen. And Andrew Voorhees was the lowest of them. Not that he was a nothing burger or anything like that, but he was the lowest of those guys. And he was the guy who came in and started immediately. And there were really high hopes for him in that first year. And then things just went off the rails, not just for him personally, but for the team, for the offensive line, for everything. And so it's really nice to see him and Brett Nealon and Justin Dedich and these guys who have gone through the ringer in this program, stuck it out, came back for COVID years, and are now getting their just desserts with these kinds of award recognitions. By the way, Brett Nealon, second team, good for him getting that recognition. It's just really good to see. Oh, and I forgot to add, I'm looking at a rundown, Mekhi Blackman is in there as well.
Yeah, as a second teamer. So when it comes to the All Pac-12 team, which will come out, I believe, on Friday morning, I think we're going to see a lot more names. Almost all those guys, I would imagine, would be first or second teamers as well there too. All right, let's get into the game. Friday night, 5 p.m. on Big Fox. Once again, SC is going to have the call of Benetti and Brock Huard. I love Brock Huard. I think he's great. And it's good to have him on the call, and Benetti's awesome as well. The voice of the White Sox. Huge improvement, by the way, for the White Sox, going from Hawk Harrelson to Jason Benetti. Like, embarrassing.
How hard is it for you to give the White Sox a nod of
Hawk isn't calling games anymore. It's really easy.
Okay. So he's not it anymore.
I mean, they're still the White Sox, but Benetti's great. Hawk Harrelson, bad.
Okay.
Very simple.
I don't have any opinions on these things. So you
go let's talk about this game. Of course, in the first matchup, SC loses on the road at Rice Eccles 43-42, a game in which Dalton Kincaid caught 49 passes for 743 yards and 9 touchdowns. Kyle Whittingham, Utah's head coach, currently in his 93rd season with the Utes, talked about Dalton Kincaid's status going into the game and said that he hurt his wrist against Colorado, but is expected to play on Friday. And to be quite honest, it was 16 catches for 234 yards and a touchdown against SC.
Yeah. If
you squint, you might see him catching
the ball. Yeah, still catching the ball, still running with the ball, just still being unstoppable.
Mm-hmm.
The good thing I can say going into this game with regard to Dalton Kincaid is, healthy or injured, I think it's fair to say he will not have that kind of production again, because there's no way USC is going into this game and not having a plan to keep him under wraps, much like, and this is where it's going to be slightly useful. Michael Mayer of Notre Dame had a success, but he was not able to do the unworldly, ungodly sort of stat line that Dalton Kincaid had in this game. And I think that's a sign that like USC has a better understanding of how to prevent something like that happening again.
Yeah.
So hopefully that is something that comes into play here. Obviously, you can't copy paste the game plan for Notre Dame defensively into this game
I
because
can.
Cam,
I can.
Cam Rising is
I will do that.
let's see. How do I want to describe Cam Rising relative to Drew Pine, who had a really good game against USC, but like when it comes to Cam Rising and Drew Pine, like I don't think their head and shoulders might not be enough of a clearance to describe the danger level of those two quarterbacks.
Yes, on a JT Shrout to DTR scale,
he's up closer to DTR.
Cam Rising is next to DTR.
Yeah.
And Drew Pine is somewhere
near Jack Plummer.
Somewhere near Jack Plummer, yes. Similar success, yes. No, you talk about, you know, the game plan can't be the same, and I'm going to sit here and say that it can be. I know what you're talking
spirit,
about.
I think
the spirit of the thing.
Yeah.
No, you've got to keep Kincaid under wraps to a certain extent, but I think if anything has proven true in the second half of the season for the Trojans, is that the offense keeps getting better. They just keep getting better. They're finishing off drives. I mean, say for the first quarter of the UCLA game, I guess they are running at an insane pace.
That's the big difference.
They are,
for me.
You know, we talk about them being number one in line yards. So much of that is because of what they're doing on the ground, independent of Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams only adds to that when he's able to sort of have his say in the zone read game as well. And what I think it ends up doing is putting so much pressure or taking pressure off of the defense. And what we saw in the Utah game, the first go around, was that there was a lot of pressure on the defense, but also there wasn't at the same time, in the sense that there was obviously pressure in that goal line stand that SC could not get at the end of the game, and there was pressure on the 2-point conversion, but you knew that in that game SC was going to get their yards. The problem was that the couple times that they didn't, it sort of backfired and put SC into a position where when the defense couldn't get any sort of stop, when they absolutely needed to in the second half, you know, it put them in a position where they were going to be susceptible to losing on a 2-point conversion attempt. And they did.
And not having enough time to answer is really what happened.
I think as the season has gone on, SC is just in a better place right now. I think SC is in a place where they can weather the storm better offensively, because I trust SC to get more points out of that game. I think if you play the game, you play the game over, you just simulate the October game with the current build of the SC team, they score more than 42 points.
Yes.
And I think Utah might still score their 43.
Yes.
In that sense. But I think SC scores more than 42 points. And that's where I can sit here and say the game plan needs to be similar to what it was against Michigan, against Notre Dame. Michael Mayer, you can let him be that dude. You can let him be insane. You can let him get his production as long as you are continuing to score. And I know that, you know, this offense first mentality is uncomfortable because it defies logic in the sense of defense wins championships, and it defies what SC fans are comfortable with when you look back at the McKay era, the Robinson era, and even the Carroll teams with the insane 2004 and 2005 offense. They were still defense first. This team is offense first, and if they play their game and they do the Gravedigger offense thing like we saw against Notre Dame, where you put all the pressure on Utah to put up their end of the bargain and score the points as well.
Yeah.
I don't think that Utah can still do it, because SC at this point, the offense is just at too high of a level to continue doing that. The difference is going to be, can Utah run the ball more? In the first matchup, yes, they went after Dalton Kincaid, but this was the entire offense was Dalton Kincaid or a Cam Rising scramble. And those are two things that absolutely murdered SC. But I think it would behoove the Utes to be able to run the football. The problem being, running the football has been the thing that SC has been good at stopping in the last month. The Trojans are I think the 28th ranked team in rushing defensively in the month of November. 28th is not top 5 or anything, but when you're talking about a defense that everyone on Twitter makes out to be the bizarro 85 Bears, 28th you absolutely take. They allowed only 90 yards against Notre Dame. They had Zach Charbonnet's 100-yard streak completely snapped. Like, they are holding running backs in check, and they did that against Utah in game 1. Utah needs to be able to run the ball to win this game, I think, because you have to expect that SC is going to put some effort into stopping Dalton Kincaid, especially with Bryson Shaw around this go around. And the difference being, the running game from Utah is completely different now than it was then. Tavion Thomas is gone, but Utah in the month of November, the number 3 rushing team in the country, 306 yards at Arizona, 279 against Stanford, 383 against Colorado. Yes, it's Colorado.
Well, I mean, all 3 of those teams are, if you're gonna stack some rushing statistics up, those are some teams that you'll do it.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
So that's maybe a little bit of a sort of mirage but they are still a team that wants to run the ball. Yes. And it was surprising how little they tried to run the ball against USC, how quickly it was just like, okay, we're just gonna let Cam Rising be the dude, and it worked out for them. So like, clearly that was something that that they did right. But I think that in the absence of Dalton Kincaid being the monster that he was in that game, they will have to try to run the ball a little bit more, and this will be another test for USC's rush defense, which clearly has stepped up to the table over the last couple of weeks. And they won't have to be factoring in Tavion Thomas, who, it's hard to say too, though, because at that time, the thing I will give you in terms of that that sort of analysis is that at that time, Utah's rushing offense was in flux because Tavion Thomas was playing, but he was also playing injured. Michael Bernard was sort of the second guy. Yeah. There was not clarity in who they were going to rely on at the time, and which is why, against USC last time, Tavion Thomas gets 8 carries for 28 yards. Michael Bernard gets 11 carries for 37 yards. Tavion Thomas being gone, I'm not going to say Utah's a better rushing offense without him, but
no, I think you can.
Tavion Thomas being gone clarifies a little bit that Michael Bernard is the dude, and sometimes having a dude is the thing you need. See USC the past 2 weeks, because
I think it's more than that. I think Jalen Glover has been a guy who's been absolutely productive as well. 62 yards against Colorado, 76 Washington State, 69 against Arizona. He's going to be another guy. The thing I like about Utah's running back group right now, Alicia, they're number 1, 2, and 3.
Their numbers.
Their numbers. I wrote this down. How beautiful it is.
That's lovely.
And
I love it.
The top 3 rushers against Colorado were number 3, 2, and 1 in that order. Jaquindon Jackson, number 3, 117 yards and 3 TDs against Colorado. Michael Bernard is number 2. Jalen Glover wears the number 1. I think that yes, with Tavion Thomas not being there, he might have been the best rusher out of all these things. But as a team, I think they're a better rusher. Since then, in the second half of the season. The interesting thing, I don't know that Cam Rising is as good right now as he was back in October.
Well, remember, he missed
the Washington State game.
Yes, but one of the sort of minor narratives that came out of the USC game was he did get injured in that game.
Yes.
And he didn't play against Washington State, and he's been playing with a brace on his knee ever since. Now, I did some digging into, like, is the brace on his knee sort of, is he hobbled or whatever? Because I've seen people say that, and I've watched.
I think that's a little overblown.
I've watched a few of the games. I get the is he hobbled thing because he was god awful against Oregon, terrible against Oregon. So like maybe
the Oregon game tanks the numbers.
That's the thing. If you look at like his rushing numbers, they're pretty consistent from before that knee thing. Like he was still taking off and running getting chunk yards against the other teams on that schedule, even against Oregon. So it's not like he isn't the same quarterback in spirit that he was tearing up USC with his legs. I still feel like he can do that. I think the bigger question that you can have for Cam Rising is the Cam Rising that USC played in that game was Cam Rising at home.
Yeah.
Cam Rising at home averages 243 yards per game, passer rating of 161.44, 16 touchdowns to 1 interception. The Cam Rising that played Oregon, i.e. the Cam Rising on the road this season in 5 games, 233.4 yards per game, 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, a passer rating of 138.55. So,
Lisa, where's this game at?
This was 5 road games this season.
Where's Friday's game at?
Friday's game is on the road. Friday's game is not in Salt Lake City. Friday's game is
it's not
in Las Vegas.
At Rice Eccles.
It's not at Rice Eccles.
But I think this is going to be as close to a neutral site game as possible. I think that if I expect it to be 50-50 on Friday.
It will not be. There's a big difference between neutral though and Rice Eccles.
Sure.
On that night.
Sure. I get that. I get those home road splits. Maybe not great. And we've talked about before that SC tends to beat Utah when they're not at Rice Eccles, and Utah tends to beat SC when the game is at Rice Eccles. And the 2020 and 2021 games, not be damned. Those being the 2 different ones. So yeah, that certainly could be a factor here. CKS in the chat says, I don't think SC scores over 40. Have you not been paying attention to the Utah defense since the first game? I did want to bring this up too, because Utah's defense since the first game has been stellar. They've been stellar the entire season. There's really 3 blips for the Utes, and it's the week 1 game against Florida. That's week 1. I don't care. It's the game at UCLA. UCLA's offense, pretty damn good. Again, I don't care. And it's the game against SC. SC's offense, pretty damn good. I don't care. Beyond that, Utah's defense has been really rock solid. Where I can say that SC's offense, I think, is better now than it was then, is that SC has had success against every defense as they've gone along. And some of those defenses have gotten significantly better than the ones that they faced earlier in the year. One of those being Notre Dame. We talked about it last week. This was supposed to be the defense that was supposed to not imitate the playoff level defenses that SC could play in the playoff, but maybe give you you squint and you can pretend a little bit. And SC passed that with flying colors. They scored on nearly every single drive, and we're just getting points after points after points per drive.
And controlling the game. Long plodding drives, which is why. Yes. I mean, they didn't score 40, but they didn't have very many possessions. That was by design.
But that's why I think this game could end up being like the Notre Dame game. And I talked about it before, that to me, that Notre Dame game is the game plan for beating Utah. It's, maybe we talked about it in the CarCast, and we talked about it in the Utah Fallout episode, should FC have gone slower and all that. And I think that there's an argument to be made for that angle. Either way, as long as you are finishing off your drives, and if you repeat the Notre Dame game, I think that's the road mark. Because if you score 30-something points, but there's fewer drives, it's essentially the same as scoring 40-something in a game that has more drives. Simple math there, I guess. But the other thing is, you take Utah's ability to just spam Dalton Kincaid away, and you finish off your drives yourself, and you give the defense maybe some more breathers to try to get the stops that they can try to wield, and we know that this is difficult for USC's defense. But if you're able to get 1 or 2 stops, create separation, make it a 2-score game, make it a 10-point lead, then you don't care if Dalton Kincaid has 593 receiving yards.
Yeah, but I think what CKS was getting at is that it's harder to have that kind of consistent offensive production when you look at a defense that's playing as well as Utah's defense is playing.
Yes, for sure.
My rebuttal on this
is the Notre Dame game.
It's not just the Notre Dame game. It's in general. It's when you look at Utah. What Kyle Whittingham has done at Utah is extremely impressive.
Mm-hmm.
What he does year after year after year is a reflection of how good of a coaching staff he puts together, how good of a coach he is, and what he demands of his team.
Yes.
He gets more out of less.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with, I mean, it's not even a problem. It's just the limitations of a Utah are that they are, I think, incredibly consistently good. Incredibly consistently good team. Like, I was looking at the stats getting ready for this podcast, and I was like coming away with like, man, Utah's a really good team. Utah is a really good team, and the margin between them being in USC's position right now, where a win puts them in the playoff, and not, is very small. But the thing about Utah is that their limitation is against the elite team. In this case, the elite unit. In these cases, the USC with Caleb Williams or UCLA with DTR. And it would have been really interesting to see Utah, Oregon with a healthy Bo Nix, to see what Oregon's offense could have done if they had been under sort of normal circumstances. But
I'm
that game is weird.
To read too much into that because of that.
I don't think you can read too much in. Well, and Utah's schedule is weird. You don't want to read too much in the Florida game because it was game 1 on the road.
Yeah.
You can't read too much into the Washington State game because that was the bizarrest game where literally everyone was injured, and it was like, who's just going to survive this bloodbath? And to their credit, they did, and I'm very impressed that they did.
Mm-hmm.
The Oregon game, it's hard because Bo Nix was, I mean, on one leg. Like, it's just, you could see that he was not the Bo Nix that had been the Bo Nix of the previous years.
Too, though? Arizona.
Well, that's true. Except Arizona does not have an elite quarterback. Arizona has a Jaden Delora who can tear up a questionable defense like USC's, but when he goes up against a consistently good defense, he's not necessarily going to be able to have a lot of success. To me, what's telling is what UCLA and USC did to this defense. This defense is very, very good, but it's very difficult for anybody without elite talent on their defense to match up with teams like a UCLA and like a USC. So I think that Utah is in a position to really prove themselves here, prove me wrong on Friday if they are able to slow down Caleb Williams. But I also just think it's almost unfair for a team like Utah because they don't have that ceiling that like Georgia's defense has, where, yeah, if Georgia paired up with USC, yeah, they might have a chance of stopping this offense. But I don't know that there are defenses in the Pac-12 who legitimately can stop USC without USC stopping themselves, which is, I think, what happened against Oregon State. Just in the sense of Oregon State is a really good team. Oregon State did a really good job against USC, but also like Caleb Williams was sort of out of his mind in that game. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be a hell of a battle on Friday. I did see the tweet from Utah with their uniforms. Eddie in the chat said that they're going to be the throwbacks that they played against Florida and Oregon. That's not what I'm seeing on Twitter. On Twitter, it's going to be the holographic red helmets. And then they're just regular road jerseys. The ugly ones with Under Armour decided to have 97 stripes on them for some reason. So of all the Utah jerseys, not the best looking ones. The all white ones are beautiful. They should absolutely wear those.
Can I just have a complaint briefly about Utah's jerseys and jersey design in general?
Sure.
Teams that over outline their numbers with like, it's not just an outline, but like their numbers have like 3 different outlines in them. Very, very
do that.
Utah's not. The jerseys that Utah wore against USC this year are not conducive to seeing numbers on a YouTube replay broadcast, because I was watching a YouTube replay trying to identify some of the players that will be taking on bigger roles in this game, or
What's a red number on black thing?
No, but it was a red number on black with a white outline, and I'm pretty sure there was another red outline somewhere in there. Either way, did not translate well to that, because I was trying to track. Let's just get into this real quick. One of the big things that USC will be looking at when you come into this game is the personnel changes that Utah has had to have since the game against USC.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously we've talked about Tavion Thomas. They have solutions to that. Defensive end Van Fillinger is out for the season with an injury, so his backup Connor O'Toole will be playing. They both had 3 tackles against USC each, but Van Fillinger is a really good defensive end in the Pac-12, so they will be missing him. Jonah Ellis, it sounds like he will not be playing, the other starting defensive end. He could be a huge miss for them. He had 4 tackles and a sack. He was one of the few guys who was able to get Caleb Williams down this season, and he has been replaced by Mickey Suguturaga, who had 1 tackle against USC. And then the guy who I was trying to track, was he responsible for any of the big plays that USC had against Utah? And the answer was no. Is Malone Matele, who was the nickelback who lost his starting job shortly after the USC game and is now in the transfer portal because Sione Vaki, the freshman, has been so impressive for Utah's secondary. So Matele had 2 tackles. He did miss a tackle, but it wasn't too terrible. And Vaki had 1 tackle against USC. So that was just some research I did this morning. And the YouTube video made it very difficult because it was very hard to distinguish which one was number 15 and which one was number 11. And I'm blind as it is. So thanks, Utah.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get into some over-under. Before we do this, we have to, of course, rehash the over-under from the Notre Dame game really quick. I'm not going to go over all these things. Not going to go over the analysis. Just run down the answers for everyone playing at home.
I'm fine with this.
You said over-under 4.5 carries for Darlin Barlow. I get that. It was under. I got that one. It was one carry for Darlin Barlow. I said over-under 301.5 Caleb Williams passing yards. You took the over. It was under at 232. You said over under 37.5 points for the Trojans. I took the over. It was over 38. Great line right there.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, you're right on the money.
Right on the money.
Yeah. Next one, I said over under 4.91 rushing yards per carry for the Trojans. You took the over, and it was 5.2. Another pretty good line, I think. Last one for you was 300.5 passing yards for Drew Pine. I took the over. It was at 318. And the last one was 1.5 fourth down attempts for the Irish. You took the over. It was just 1. It was under. So for the week, I went 5-1. Hell yeah. 5-1.
One
you
step
went 1
forward,
and 5,
2
of course.
steps back.
For the season, I'm now at 44 over-under wins. You are at 38. For the week, Alicia, this was a wild week in Reign of Troy over-under. For the week, huge shout out to the only other person who also went 5-1, Cali Cat.
Woohoo!
Me and Cali Cat, the only people to go 5-1.
Yeah,
nobody
that's
else.
crazy.
Nobody else got close.
The Robots are usually
all over
way
the
better
place.
than us.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Nobody got close. Here's the crazy thing, too. Last week, first place, Ryan from Arizona. Third place, LA Fred. And sixth place, Jay Vandy. All went 1 and 5.
I feel you guys.
Third place, Carrie from Chicago went 0 and 6.
Oh, Carrie, no. I feel
0
it.
and 6. Lots of movement. So here is the new top 9. These are all the people within 4 over-under wins of number 1. Number 1, we'll start at number 7. Tied for 7th. This is 7th, 8th, and 9th. with 48 over-under wins. Kerry from Chicago, Jay Vandy, and Ocean Beach Trojans, 48 over-under wins. Tied for 5th with 49 is LA Fred and Steven Shad, tied there at 49. Nobody is at 50. But at 51 are 3 people tied for 2nd place. Cali Cat, who went 5-1 last year, moved from 7th place to 2nd place.
Big moves.
Along with Moose Pants, great name, by the way, and Randy from Redlands, all at 51 over-under wins. And in 1st place, hanging on barely, is Ryan from Arizona, 52 over-under wins. It's tight. It is tight. So here we go. What's your first over-under for the Pac-12 Championship Game, USC and Utah?
All right. Going back to an old standard from this season.
All right.
4.5 combined punts for USC and Utah. Both sides of the ball last time punted twice, so it was 4. But as we've talked about, I think USC's defense is probably more equipped to force a couple punts than they were at the time.
Yeah.
With Eric Gentry being healthy theoretically and just sort of not being in the Dalton Kincaid grinder. Yeah. Utah also potentially has a better idea of what to expect from Caleb Williams and USC's offense. Maybe the USC offense that we saw against UCLA, where they were shooting themselves in the foot a few times, comes to play. Are we going to see 5 punts in this game? Punts of any variety. Pooch punts are included in this because I am all aboard the Caleb Williams. If USC is anywhere near the 50, Caleb Williams should be the one pooching that punting. So.
Pooching that punting. I like that. Give me the
Pooching
over.
is winning.
Give me the over. I think there'll be some defense in this game.
Okay.
Yeah. I think there will be a little more defense in this game, slightly. Give me the over there. My first line was very difficult for me to figure out. I talked about it earlier. I think Utah is running the ball better than they have all year. SC is stopping the run better than they have all year. The Utes 3rd nationally in rushing in November, averaging 281 yards per game. Obviously not going to set the line there, but I'm going to go at 156.5 Utah rushing yards. They had 156 against Oregon. So will they outrun themselves against USC versus what they did against Oregon? Is the question. 156.5 Utah rushing yards.
I am taking the under on this.
Ooh, okay.
I think that USC has sort of figured out that their game plan is just to do the Clancy Pendergast thing, take one thing away, make it more difficult. Personally, I would like to see USC take a combination of what they did against UCLA and Notre Dame, which is pretty much still the same thing. Just with the added, remember this is a Russian quarterback. Keep him in front of you at all times. Don't get too aggressive. Keep him in front of you at all times, which is not something they did against Cam Rising. And I think that would certainly help the situation. But I think USC is going to be able to not let Utah go off on them in terms of the run game. I think this game is very much going to come down to what kind of damage Cam Rising can do.
All right. What's your next over under?
All right, I got 2.5 4th down attempts for Utah, another old standard.
Yep.
Utah went 3 of 3 against USC last time out,
including at the goal line.
They have attempted 4 4th downs in 3 games. They went 3 of 4 against ASU. They went 4 of 4 against Stanford. They went 1 of 4 against Utah, another factor in why they lost that game. So, will they have one of their higher scores of 4th down attempts by going above 2?
2.5 is such an annoying line.
Yeah. Yep.
1.5, I'm taking the over. 3.5, I'm taking the under. 2.5, though.
It's rough.
It's bold, but give me the over.
Oh.
Give me the over.
I don't think that's a terrible pick because Kyle Whittingham has sort of just been uber aggressive on the 4th downs. And I don't know that USC is going to get too many stops on the Utah side of the field to not give him that option to go for fourth.
All right. My next over under is going to be 1.5 Cam Rising interceptions. He has 7 this year, which is not a lot, but 3 of them were at Autzen Stadium against Oregon a couple weeks ago. SC tends to force turnovers. We've seen it, especially in big games the last couple of weeks. Cam Rising's 131.4 quarterback rating in November, his lowest in a full month since becoming the starter at Utah. Again, severely tanked by the Oregon game. 1.5 Cam Rising interceptions.
I am going to go with the over.
Ooh.
Against my better judgment. But you know what?
Wow.
As you've written here, USC tends to force turnovers in big games. USC is capping games with interceptions when the other team is going out there and pushing the ball. And and Cam Rising has thrown all but one of his interceptions away from home. So I'm going over here. I think USC can get 2 picks in this game.
All right.
And if I'm going to go down in this over-under battle, I'm going to go down swinging.
All right. What's your last one?
90.5 Dalton Kincaid receiving yards. I lowered it a tiny bit from like 99 because we don't know what his health status is. Even if Kyle Whittingham says he's going to play, that doesn't mean that he's going to play extensively. We don't know what's the status of his wrist. He had 234 receiving yards against USC last time.
Yep.
He had 99 receiving yards against Oregon. Yep. 102 against Colorado. But outside of that USC game, it's not like he's like popping off for a ton of yards every time out. So is there a chance that USC is able to limit him under 90, considering that they limited Michael Mayer to 98, I think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was 98. I think Dalton Kincaid gets his in this game if he's healthy. And I'm a big believer in don't worry about that as long as you finish off. You do your own job on offense. Don't worry about it. Don't let Dalton Kincaid open up other avenues also is a big key point, I think, for SC. Don't let the receivers start going off because you're triple teaming Dalton Kincaid also. So 90.5. I think a healthy Dalton Kincaid gets 90.5. I think but is this going to be a healthy Dalton Kincaid?
Where you going?
Give me the over.
Okay.
Give it to me.
Okay. See how it goes.
Give it to me. All right. Last one. 1.5 Caleb Williams Heisman pose events. The keyword events. It's not the poses themselves. He hits 3 poses in a matter of 2 seconds. It doesn't count as 3 poses. That's 1 pose event. So 1.5 Caleb Williams Heisman pose events.
Okay. The Notre Dame game, the Heisman pose events that he had were egged on by teammates. Teammates were egging him on to do it, and so he did it. I think that after a week of people literally saying he has won the Heisman, I actually think that he's less likely to strike the Heisman pose, just knowing Caleb Williams. So I am going to go under on this. I will be happy to be wrong. All I want is for Caleb Williams to drop a Heisman pose in a picturesque area where, like, you know, he's running into the end zone and then strikes the pose, like where it's there instead of like on his way back to the huddle with a bunch of teammates around him, so that it's not like cinematic or whatever. But yeah, I'm gonna go under just because I think that all the Heisman talk will dissuade him from doing it this time.
All right. I could see it. I could see this game being so laser focused as a championship game and the playoff on the line that you just don't even think about that thing.
Yes.
I could see it.
And sure. I don't. You have to correct me, but I think the Heisman poses he did drop were later in the game against Notre Dame once USC had a nice cushion.
Yeah.
And it's going to be harder to
If
have
it's
an
a
edge
close
coaching
game,
in
you
this
might
game.
you might
You're
not
just
get
not going
there.
to see it.
For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. All right. Let's get to the game predictions, folks. If you're watching here on YouTube, this is your chance to also leave a prediction. Of course, to do so, you have to like the video first. So we're going to wait a second, go like right over here, wherever it is, hit the like, make sure you're subscribed, hit the bell so that way you know when we go live and all of that. And let's get your score prediction. USC and Utah, Locking Horns, 5 p.m. Big Fox, the Pac-12 Championship Game at Allegiant Field, Allegiant Stadium, whatever it is, in Vegas. Alicia, Bill Connolly, his stats, the SP Plus numbers, have USC losing 32 to 31.7
By 0.3 points.
with a 49% win probability. Vegas, the consensus line right now is at 2.5, favoring the Trojans. The Trojans by 2.5 with an over/under of 67.5. If you do the little weird math thing, which we screwed up last week, by the way, screwed up our. I'm not blaming anybody. The do the little math thing that means SC like 35 to 32.5. What's your prediction though?
I am going with USC 38, Utah 35. I think this will be a very similar game to last time. I think that Cam Rising will make a couple of mistakes that holds Utah back from what they did last time. But I also think that USC's offense will have their own moments of shooting themselves in the foot, the way that we've seen them do that at times. And I think that it'll come down to the end. I think that Caleb Williams will be the difference in this game. He will kick a field goal to win at the death. No, I'm just kidding. No, 38 to 35. It'll be close, but yeah, hard to say.
38-35. You have the Trojans. Okay. I fully think that this game. I think Utah is very good. I really like watching Utah. I think Cam Rising is a hell of a player, even though he wears the Vices helmet that I really can't stand. But that's a whole other side plot. Utah's very good. Utah's defense, very good. Utah's running game, very good. Utah fans will be very loud there in Vegas. This will feel like Rice Eccles Southwest slightly, except for there will be half the stadium in Cardinal and Gold ready for SC to go to the playoff. And the Trojans are going to do it because this game is going to be a repeat of the Notre Dame game, almost to a T, but minus the field goal on both sides. 34-23 is my score here.
Let me live in your reality. If you could sign me up for that right now, oh my gosh, I would.
Close
yes.
game. Close game. Don't.
But
SC
one of
winning
those
by 11 doesn't mean that they dominated this
no,
game.
but one of those USC is ahead by 10 for most of it, and it's like just comfortable enough to not be like killing you, but
SC
also
goes up 10-0 in the first quarter, battles it out the rest of the way.
okay.
That's what I see.
I want that.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to the mailbag. We got a ton of emails and everything. So let's get to start with a message we got on Slack from Samuel, who says, "They're going 11-1 in the regular season. How are you feeling going in the Pac-12 Championship and whatever bowl game SC ends up in? How will the expectations for next season change, given the results of the regular season, and does the immediate success that Lincoln Riley has created so far create an unrealistic expectation for next season, especially if we win Friday and end up in the playoffs?" To which our pal Dan responded, "I think this is Samuel's question in shorter form, : is next season championship or bust?"
The short answer is, from a perception perspective, yes. If USC goes to if USC wins the Pac-12, if USC goes to the playoff, USC will go into next season with Caleb Williams having won the Heisman. They will go into next season probably ranked top 4, top 3, depending on what else goes on in college football. If they win a playoff game, then they will go in top 2, I would wager. Not saying they will, but like I just think that the more you win this season, the more likely you will to end up next season with everyone looking at it. Well, you return the Heisman winner. Look at what you did in year 1. You should get better in year 2. From my perspective, I can't control what the outside expectations are. From my perspective, I will continue to look at it as this is still not a full-blown team. This is a defense that needs to continue to get better. I think they will get better. The question is, will USC's defense get better enough in 2023 to negate the reality, unfortunately, that USC's offensive line is going to get significantly less veteran? Losing Andrew Voorhees, losing Brett Nealon, potentially losing Justin Diedich, although there's a possibility of him coming back, so that's potentially huge. I believe Bobby Haskins has no more eligibility left. So the core of USC's offensive line is leaving. That means there's going to be an offensive line sort of feeling out period that may make Caleb Williams' life a little bit more difficult. That's just to say that I won't go into 2023 thinking it's championship or bust, but I will go into 2023 thinking if the defense is a step better and Caleb Williams is who he is, then this team should be able to win the Pac-12 again. And anything beyond that is a function of what happens, of what we see during the season.
Yeah, to go off Dan's rebuttal or rephrasing of it, is next season championship or bust? No. However, I think that Sam makes a great sort of tossing it out here that the expectations do need to be revised because SC is at least 1, if not realistically 2 years ahead of schedule for me. And as it stands right now, and considering that they go into next season, bringing back Caleb Williams, potentially likely the Heisman winner, you're going to walk into next season with insane expectations. But I still think it should be playoff or bust. I think until you are Alabama or Clemson, who has won multiple national championships, I don't think it can be like national championship or bust. You need to win. Like if SC wins the national championship this year, you can go into next year saying championship or bust. But until then, it's playoff or bust. And I think that'll be totally fair. The difficult part is, rebuilding the offensive line is going to be very difficult because in many ways, this was maybe we're going to look back in hindsight and think that this was the team all along because of the offensive line. So,
yeah.
I don't know.
There's a lot to work out between now and then.
Yeah. Let's go to an email we got from Andy. I'm listening to the post Notre Dame CardCast on Sunday afternoon, including your comments about the SC resume this year, and thinking, isn't it terrific to finally have a head coach in Lincoln Riley who was walking the talk, i.e. regarding expectations of championships when he was hired? Like you have both said, is it always pretty? No. However, let us all just sit back and enjoy it. Great win for the Trojans. Best of luck to Coach Riley, staff, and the team, the Pac-12 Championship and beyond. Best, Andy.
Yeah, this is why you hire a head coach who has proven that he can do it and not an interim who had no experience before or hopeful sort of retreads or anything like that.
Yeah, 100%. Tim says, hey, Raven Troy, happy championship week. Another list of random scatterbrain thoughts. A few episodes ago, you talked about the lack of respect for Pete Arbogast, and I completely agree. Completely agree. Have you noticed lately when USC puts out highlights, he replies with the link to his call of it? It's kind of crazy he has to do that. The official Twitter account finally included him, though. They put up his call of Corey Foreman's interception against UCLA and his call of a Caleb touchdown last Saturday when he lobbied for the Heisman. Speaking of Heisman votes, SC lobbied hard at the Notre Dame game for the fan vote, but I haven't seen any big social media push. Why do you think that is? Right now, Caleb is 4th place with 8%. Stetson Bennett is leading with 32%. I've been a Utah fan since Urban Meyer was there, and I really like Whittingham. I've sat next to some really cool Utah fans at games. I know crazies are the minority and not to judge the whole fan base because of them, but what is going on Twitter with Utah fans? Where did that come from? How cool was it to recognize the Nealon nudge as a season-defining moment when it happened? It will deservedly be part of USC lore. I can only imagine how cool it would have been if it was instead of 6, it was 4th and 9. Thanks for the awesome podcast all the way. The live format has been great. Fight on and beat the Utes, Tim from LA. Lot to go there. Start with the Arbogast stuff. Yeah, Arbo's tweeting out links and it's great.
Yeah, but I would prefer if USC just put out a highlight with his call for every one of those good calls. This is something that, like, with my day job, this is something we are looking at more. Is people really like to hear the radio calls to these big moments, and so we're covering them more and more. And like the Vikings do a really good job with Paul Allen, who is an absolute insane person in the booth, and it's amazing. Like that's what USC should be doing with these calls. They should have the highlight, just the individual highlight with Peter Arbogast call. They will take off. People love it. I love it. You love it, Michael. We know everyone else loves it. Just roll with it. When you're watching the game, you hear the broadcast TV guys. You want to hear your radio guy.
Yeah, 100%. To go back to the Heisman stuff, I think there is going to be absolutely a social media push. They've already started the website too. Yeah, what are you saying?
He doesn't need that fan vote.
Oh, well, yeah.
My perspective.
Probably not.
Yeah.
In terms of what's going on with Utah fans, is that in relation to like the NIL stuff? Is that what you're saying?
That's in relation to what happened on Tuesday. I think Tim was in and around my mentions. The Utah fans, they've always been notorious for being around on Twitter. If like you mention anything related to Utah, they always come flocking in. So that happens. I saw somebody tweet the other day that I retweeted, like, spend enough time on Twitter and you'll grow to hate every fan base, including your own. It's just amplified that the squeakiest wheels, the most, insane ones are the ones that you sort of see the most. So I would default to your in-person interactions with Utah fans as your judgment of who Utah fans are, and just sort of shrug at craziness on Twitter, because Twitter is crazy and we love it, but it is crazy.
Yeah, I think Twitter, Utah fans, the vast majority are great. And the Nealon nudge, yeah, that was always going to be a moment for greatness when we saw it. Darlene from Grand Terrace writing in, since I'm usually on the road during the live YouTube podcast. 1 year since USC hired Lincoln Riley, and I can only say things have turned out so much better than I thought, than we all did, I'm sure. I can just recall the end of the last home game in 2021 against BYU so vividly, seeing the ball go short of the sticks and the Trojans get handed another loss as I sat among BYU fans. I slumped in my seat, just like feeling surely things could not get worse. But yet I didn't really have much hope that they get a whole lot better anytime soon either. Cut to Saturday, and I was stuck in line to get into the Coliseum. I know bad form since Alicia trains us to get there early, but in my defense, I had zero need to get there early for a while now, and Saturday it was clear and it all changed. I'll be early on Friday, I promise. Going to the Pac-12 Championship Game in Vegas was something I literally wrote in pencil on my calendar at the start of the season, figuring I would end up erasing it at some point, but I did not, and now I'm more pumped than ever. It was very not fun sitting through the terrible games last year, but I kept going because I can't help myself, and I missed it after the lost 2020 season. I clearly am okay with torturing myself too, but all those games just make it even sweeter now. It's been so much fun, and I can't wrap my head around that this is only the beginning. Thank you for keeping me and the fellow Rotbots sane during trying times. I love the community that you have built up and so happy to be a part of it, and even more happy that we get to enjoy our Trojans winning once again. Fight the F on and beat the Utes. Playoffs, baby.
Yes. I love that, Darlene. Thank you for emailing in.
We need a playoffs drop.
We need a
playoffs baby drop.
Playoffs baby drop. We were just talking about like a podcast stuff that we want to get, and like, yeah, we need to get our soundboard back up and running, or figure it out, because then we can do our playoffs baby drop.
Yeah.
We couldn't do we're going to the ship this year. Like, come on, let's go. But yes, okay, number one, it's awesome I know it sucks that you had to stand in line, Darlene, but how awesome is it that you had to stand in line? Because that meant people are coming back to the Coliseum, coming to fill the Coliseum, excited about this program again. And it all does come back to that Lincoln Riley hire. I went back and listened to the podcast that we did immediately after. I went back and looked at our text messages during that game, and it was a really surreal and fun look down memory lane of the moments of like, why is Bruce Feldman even talking about Lincoln Riley? Like, what is his agent trying to get from LSU? Like, just stop it. To wait, for real? What? Is this real life?
I was still paranoid the Raiders were going to hire him away or something because
me too.
Of the whole like Cliff Kingsbury trauma. So
yeah, and during that podcast we were just talking about it's still a 50-50 proposition. Like you don't know if things are going to translate immediately, like all of that, and then to be in this position, it's wild, it's incredible, it's beyond everything. So moving on to another email from John in Azusa. Hi, Alicia and Michael. This is more of a comment than a question. I saw Utah head coach Kyle Whittingham's conference championship presser today. He was asked about the turnaround Lincoln Riley has done this year, and he immediately talks about the transfer portal, as if he has not benefited from it in any capacity. He made these same comments in his presser last week in the first meeting between these two, in the week of the first meeting between these two teams. David Shaw also made similar comments. Are you both as tired as I am of this narrative? There is no doubt we benefited from the transfer portal, but to pretend that it's as easy as the snap of your finger to portal your way to a conference championship and a potential CFP is asinine. I think for these reasons, Riley won't win any Coach of the Year awards that he definitely deserves. I hope we show no mercy this Friday. I will be there. Fight on, John in Azusa. And I have so much to say on this, John, so I'm going to give you a second to talk, Michael, but I got to get this out immediately. Yes. I am tired of it. I wore my my Star Wars ugly Christmas sweater shirt today because if people are going to accuse USC of being the evil empire, then I'm going to embrace it again. I'm going back to arrogant nation kind of perspective because everyone is all over my timeline. It's USC cheated. USC stole players from other teams. USC's NIL is driving everything, blah, 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 blah. All I have to say is this. See Texas A&M for how NIL does not equal wins, and see Alabama for how transfers do not equal wins. Because Alabama added the best running back in the portal, the best cornerback in the portal to a team that was already playoff runner-up. And we have seen this year that is not the end-all be-all. They got Henry To'oTo'o from Tennessee. Do you know what Henry To'oTo'o would mean to USC's defense? You know what half of the transfers that Alabama has brought in would mean to USC's defense? And they're not in the SEC title game. Texas A&M is a dumpster fire. It takes more than just getting transfers in to be as successful as USC has been this year. We've said it over and over and over again. Lincoln Riley is not getting and will not get as much credit as he deserves for overturning a roster more or less 50%, new players, whether freshmen or transfers, and getting them to buy in to the degree that they did. To get Austin Jones to live through half of the season in the shadow of Travis Dye and then get his opportunity to do what he's been done the last 2 weeks. To get Travis Dye to integrate the way that he did. To get Caleb Williams and Jordan Addison to be interconnected that quickly, along with every other receiver that's in that receiving core, so that when Jordan Addison and Mario Williams goes down, there is no skipping of anything because everybody is on the same page. To see the way that these guys have integrated so quickly, it is spectacularly impressive, and they are not going to give him that credit because it's going to be like, oh, he just bought his roster. Well, number one, USC doesn't have an NIL collective like Texas A&M, so they literally cannot buy the roster. All they can do is offer players media, sort of a promotional NIL stuff. So Caleb Williams could have sold beats anywhere in the country. Jordan Addison could have been in commercials for United Airlines anywhere in the country, but they chose to come to USC because they wanted to play for Lincoln Riley. And they have followed through by playing at a high level for Lincoln Riley with everybody else on this team, including those 3 All-Americans that we've already talked about who were inherited on this team, who were not transfers in. You had a core of talent that just needed to have an opportunity to succeed. and you supplemented them with some really, really outstanding transfers who were not just good talents, they were good fits mentally for this team. People are trying to just reason their way out of the nightmare that is USC being good again. But like USC is good again because Lincoln Riley is a very, very, very good head coach. And you have to give him credit for that. I'm sorry, Michael. You can also chime in on this.
No, I think that you make a lot of points. I'm sympathetic to the idea that the transfer portal is just going to, like, the transfer portal and the one-time transfers is going to help the rich get richer and all that stuff. And from Utah's perspective, I'm sympathetic to that general idea. The difference being, I think the transfer portal helps literally everybody.
See Washington, Oregon, every Pac-12 team that is now ranked more or less has a transfer quarterback at the helm.
Yeah, and then Utah has
Cam Rising, who was a transfer.
Has Cam Rising, but I think that when people talk about the transfer portal, they're more than anything talking about the guys who can play immediately, and now that it's a thing, right? And you look at it, and for all the SC and Alabama are going to benefit from being able to get those guys, but also there's going to be guys who leave those schools that go somewhere else because Alabama brings in so much talent, and there's going to be extra guys that you're Shane Lee's, right? Shane Lee going to SC in this case, right? A guy who gets a chance at Alabama, but then suddenly Alabama has so many 5 stars, he's got no place to go, right? There's guys like that. There's guys who are moving all over. Taj Washington is someone who goes from the G5 to the Power 5 for SC, but also that happens. The inverse happens too. Jake Hayner, someone like him who goes from Washington down to Fresno State, like those guys get more opportunities.
Gary Bryant
Utah
Jr.
is able to go out here and recruit in different ways. Everyone has access to recruit up and down, vertically, backwards, like any way you want to do it right now, the transfer portal, because there's going to be dudes who are over recruited, under recruited, get into a situation that don't fit, etc. So yes, SC is going to benefit from sort of the top line guys because they have a good coach right now and they have a reputation and history and all these things. But you still have to win with all that talent, and you still have to be able to recruit all that talent. And the crux of the matter is what SC is doing right now is unprecedented. Part of it is because the rules have changed and no one else was allowed to do what SC is doing right now in terms of bringing in all these guys and having this crazy of a change so quickly. But also, when you change the roster this dramatically, like I talked about it before, like earlier on in the season, how many times did the Lakers go out and just get all these dudes, all these big superstars that you thought were going to be great, and
Dream
they
teams.
didn't? And this isn't to say that stars don't matter. I'm not making the stars don't matter argument. I'm mostly making the chemistry argument.
Yes.
Because in year one, like when you have a 1 year chance of anything, it's hard. We talked about Katie Nixon being someone who was going to be a big piece of SC in 2021, and he came here and caught like one pass, right? Like, and that's just one dude, but like, it's hard. It's really difficult.
Yeah.
I remember 20 years ago, Brandon Hance, thinking that Brandon Hance was going to be the next guy. He was going to replace Carson Palmer at quarterback. He lost to Matt Leinart, and Matt Leinart ended up winning the Heisman. And so you still have to do the thing. You still have to do the thing, and SC is doing the thing with the coaches and with the players and developing and doing all of that. So
yes. All right, moving on to an email from Corbin. We also got a question about what email you can send this to. It is reignoftroy@fansided.com. Fansided, FANSIDED.com. So look in the show notes, I believe, and you should be able to find it as well.
Yeah.
All right, email from Corbin. Michael and Alicia. Hello and happy Lincoln Riley Day. I remember listening to your emergency podcast when the news of Lincoln Riley's hiring broke. And it was during the discussion of Riley's Heisman success that the significance of the hire really hit me. In that moment, I thought, if there is anyone who could really bring USC back to its old ways, of course it's going to be Lincoln Riley. I just couldn't have imagined that the expansion of the trophy case in Heritage Hall would have been a foregone conclusion inside of 365 days. That said, USC now has a problem, and I want your thoughts. The university just spent a massive sum of money restoring and repairing the Coliseum peristyle, and it turned out magnificently. However, there are currently 6 sections adorned with 6 jerseys in front of them. When 13 is retired in a few years, where does the university place the 7th jersey? Does the school acknowledge the other retired number in the interest of symmetry? Or does the extra jersey get tossed to one side or the other, like a shirt that doesn't quite make it into the laundry basket? Thanks and fight on. Corbin from Oregon. Corbin, I hadn't read your email before starting it, and I had a moment of like, what is this problem he's going to speak of? And then as soon as it came, I was like, Corbin, this is wonderful. Thank you for this email. Do you have a thought, Michael? Because my thought is just bring back Reggie's 5, make it symmetry, go 4 and 4, and make them fit.
I believe they will probably do something like they did last time, which is stack them. But even if you stack them, it might be a little difficult.
You have to just sort of get new ones printed and make them sort of resize them.
Yeah. If you stack them and then put an SC logo on one of them, then you have 8. Even though they make it 8, make it stacked with 4, 2 in each one across the 4 in the middle, and then you sell ads on the ends.
When Reggie's
something, I don't know.
When Reggie's was in there, didn't they have like a blank, like an ad or like another tarp thing that was just something? Or am I imagining it? I feel like they've had
I want to say
like
that
muscle
the other
milk or
ones were
something like
lower.
that. Yeah, I don't know.
I can't remember exactly off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But there might have been like an SE logo on the end.
Yeah.
Or you just retire someone else, retire Pete Arbogast's microphone.
There you go.
Or retroactively retire Tom Kelly's microphone.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
Done.
There you go.
Done.
I like it.
All right, Alicia, I have to read this.
You have to read this one. Yeah.
So a YouTube comment we got from Half-Breed on the CarCast. Right on, Michael, my guy. P.S. He had to straighten out Alicia. LOL. Crying emoji, rolling on the floor, laughing emoji. With her complaining about the defense, he said, wait a minute, this game here had less plays. He's speaking facts emoji. About the defense played better. I guess Alicia didn't eyeball emojis the sacks, the interception, the fumble, football emoji, recovery, the several stops, 2 stop sign emojis on 4th down. Yes, she likes last year's team better. Kick, knee emoji, rock emoji. Not a real all caps Trojan. To me, no matter what anyone says, I can smell nose emoji. A fake 1 mile away. Make that 100 miles away. Alicia, space, exclamation.
Thank you for your dramatic reading of those emojis.
That was from Half-Breed on YouTube.
Yeah.
Apropos.
There were some comments on YouTube from people who I think don't understand what my job is. Because my job is not to sit here and tell you all that USC is the most amazing team that ever was, and that they're going to win every game, and that they're perfect, and that nothing is ever wrong. And that makes me a true Trojan because I don't know. If you are watching this team and you think that this is a good defense, then I don't know what to tell you, because I have watched good defenses at USC, and this is not one of them. What this defense is very effective. They are opportunistic. They play hard. They play beyond their means. They outwork themselves to be in a position where they're not a liability for USC. This defense is admirable. I love this defense. In fact, like, I would go to bat for this defense. I have been saying all season that I don't give a crap that they give up 45 points to Utah. the offense should score more because you expect more from the offense. I don't give a crap that they gave up 45 points to UCLA because the offense should score more. That's how much better this offense is. I hold the offense to a significantly higher standard than I do the defense. So like if you think that I'm harsh on the defense, then you have not listened to me talk about this offense, because this offense is incredible and they have not been good enough often in this season for me. So that's the thing. But also I just think it's funny that people don't accept criticism in any way, shape, or form. Or people think that like we are super negative just because we point out that like, yeah, this team ranks like 100 and something in scoring defense. That's just a fact, guys. I'm sorry.
I mean, well, the thing about podcast criticism, it tends to be half people upset that we are saying positive things, and half that we are saying negative things at the same time. So can't win in a lot of ways, but that's why you come to us, because we know that we're going to be honest and fair to what we deem to be fair. So
and we're not going to change. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that USC has a good defense. I won't use the word good to describe this defense. I'm sorry. You can disagree with me, but I will not do it. That's just me.
We got a bunch of questions here. We've been going for an hour and a half. It's the longest episode of all time.
It's a combo episode. We didn't record on Monday. This is what happens.
I know. We got a bunch of questions on YouTube, so we're going to go rapid fire on YouTube here to wrap this thing out. So are you ready, Alicia?
Yes.
Rapid fire. Jim says, do we have any significant players injured or likely not to play on Friday?
We do not have word on Raylan Goforth or Andrew Voorhees, or I think Justin Dedich has been playing through a thing. So the injuries are not public.
Raider Trojan, who do you think we end up with a better matchup against, Michigan or Georgia? Or do we match up better against
Michigan? Georgia's defense is the last thing that USC wants to play. That's my opinion. I think USC could give Michigan some trouble, but Georgia's defense is the kryptonite. I think I fear for USC's offense.
Yes, Michigan's great, insanely great defense.
Yeah,
Georgia feels like a generationally great defense.
Yeah.
Fighting on MC. Does USC stand a chance of beating any of the other three championship teams? Yes. I absolutely. You kidding? I would love to see the TCU game. Would be insane.
SCTCU would be so much fun. Make it happen.
Yeah, it would be beautiful.
Yeah.
Dave the Greater, how did Utah get in instead of Washington? There was a three-way. First of all, the Pac-12 deciding to go to no division. Scrapping the divisions is what screwed Washington more than anything. Washington would have been in. But there was a three-way tie at 7-2 between Oregon, Utah, and Washington. Since Washington did not play Utah, they couldn't go around the horn with the head-to-head, so they had to go to a bunch of tiebreakers. It ended up being that Utah was the winner of that, based on common opponents, and that's because they all played ASU, I believe, right?
Yes, and Washington lost to ASU, and if I remember correctly, that is the deciding factor. Washington's lost to ASU, which made no sense.
Which, in general, Washington's biggest problem, yes, is that they lost to ASU, because if not, then
they would be where USC.
There's a realistic chance that they are number 4 in the country, and SC is number 5 in the country, just based on when they lost the first game. They would have probably been slightly ahead. And then it's number 4 versus number 5 for a chance to go to the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it would have been the greatest game in the history of the Pac-12.
Yep.
But alas,
ASU.
Not the case. SJ, let's say that TCU and USC both win. Georgia and Michigan both lose. How would you seed the Final Four?
In that scenario, Michigan is 4th. That's the only thing I know, because losing to Purdue is bad.
Does it just inverse the thing?
So here's the problem. USC, I think, is solidly 3rd. TCU and Georgia, I personally would have TCU 1st and knock Georgia for the loss. TCU being undefeated, at a certain point, you have to give them credit for that. But I don't know if the committee would do that.
Yeah, I think it ends up being TCU 1, SC 2.
I think Georgia's still 2.
So Georgia 2, SC 3. Either way, it's still SC
It's still
Georgia.
the worst case
It's
scenario
still the
for
same
USC.
matchups.
It's the worst case scenario for USC.
Yeah.
Although not the worst case, because 2-3 means Georgia won't be in Atlanta, I assume. Or will they? I don't know. I don't know how the locations work.
They still
would they still be in Atlanta? So either way, yeah.
Because the number one would be TCU, and TCU would probably
be in
want
the Fiesta. Yeah.
CKS says, is SC going to double or triple team Kincaid? Who do they leave open if they they're going to leave somebody open if they do so? Perhaps Utah is hoping SC uses 2 or 3 defenders on him. Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely what Utah is going to hope. And if they do that, can Vele get a big part of this?
Devon Vele had some big catches in that game against USC. He
only had like 2 or 3. Right?
He had 5 catches for 62 yards and a touchdown. He was targeted 10 times, so I don't know. I don't remember what happened on those targets. But yeah, Vele is, I think, the one that sort of stands out as the guy who would. Solomon Enis
targeted 10 times.
Yeah, he was targeted. At least this is according to the to the game book.
Yeah, I'm just pulled it up now. Yeah.
Solomon Enis only had 1 catch for 9 yards on 3 targets. He is somebody who could definitely benefit and have a much bigger game this time around if Kincaid isn't going off. Yeah.
Yeah, Kenny says, can we have the 2018 OU talk tonight? We're doing rapid fire. So can you keep it to like 20 seconds?
Yes. Okay. 2018 OU somehow had a worse defense than USC did. Offense on par with USC. Same profile of team. Ridiculous offense, shaky defense, but they are opportunistic and get the job done.
Yeah.
They too go into the conference title game. I think they were ranked 5. USC's ranked 4, but needing to avenge a narrow loss to a conference rival. They had lost to Texas by 3 points. They go into the conference title game, avenge that loss, propel into the playoff. USC going into a conference title game with the playoff on the line. They need to avenge their narrow loss in order to lock in a place in the playoff. That team loses to Alabama in the playoff.
Bad first quarter.
Yeah, bad first quarter. Just didn't get it going. So I don't know if that's a comparison that we want to make at this point. But it is really interesting that Lincoln Riley, obviously the head coach of that Oklahoma team, very, very similar profile to a team that looks like it's headed for the playoff.
Yeah, it does feel a lot the same way. And Kyler Murray won the Heisman sort of late in the season.
Yeah, he was sort of came on the last 2-3 weeks of suddenly it's like, well, he was sort of lurking and then suddenly was like, oh, he's going to win it and a runaway winner.
That's kind of the same way with Caleb Williams. Yeah. Like the whole Season was Strout, and then all of a sudden Hendon Hooker, and then it's Caleb Williams again. Steve Unger says, do you two ever argue about broadcast? Do you two ever argue after the broadcast about positions taken?
We do not ever argue about positions taken. The only thing we argue about is who interrupted who more.
Yes, constantly. Yeah, like I was making a really good point, and you just had to keep going, didn't you? And then we argue about lasagna, of course.
Yes.
Michael Velasquez says, serious question. If Utah plays their best game of the season on Friday, so does SC. Who wins?
SC.
I think so too. Jack says, how similarly do you think Friday's game will be to our loss earlier in the year?
I think it will be similar in that I still think it will be a game where the offenses are dictating the pace of play. But it's also hard to say.
I think it'll be close in that, yes, the offenses will move up and down, but I still think that teams will settle for field goals this time, and those field goals will be the damning ones.
I'm quite certain that USC won't start 14-0 though. Because that was something that like shook me, is that I forgot that USC started 14-0, and then
21-7.
It was 14-0. It should have been 21-7, and then I dropped a line in text messages and Slacks that I instantly regretted about how USC was going to the playoff, which turned out to potentially still be true. But in hindsight, yeah, I might have jinxed.
Glenn says, when SC gets to the national championship, will you two at least go to the stadium and do a true CarCast after the win?
Okay,
hopefully.
Okay, there is dreaming. There is dreaming.
We'll see.
So we'll see.
Jack, question: how will Friday's game play out if SC can lock up Kincaid and the defense shows up like we needed them to, like they did last week. And if that's the case, then I think SC wins this game comfortably. Comfortably doesn't mean like by 30 points, but like comfortably, maybe like the Notre Dame game win.
Exactly. I think if USC shuts down, not shuts down, keeps him limited, and comes to play the way that the defense did against Notre Dame, then USC will potentially have a 2-score lead for most of the game and just have to match at a certain point what Utah does.
Sergio says, my first time here tonight. I'm used to listening to the podcast. I'm glad I found you kids. Thumbs up. Thank you.
Hi, Sergio. One of my favorite things is just like randomly as we go through the fall, people popping in going like, hey, you guys. And it's like, yeah, welcome back. Let's go.
Yeah. Michael Velasquez, Relique Brown breakout game Friday night. Anyone? Hey, I don't think we'd ever talked about Austin Jones's name in this game, in this podcast. An hour and 40 minutes into it, Austin Jones has been
the Austin Jones show.
SC's best player, not named Caleb Williams, the last 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
If that continues to be, it's going to be very difficult for Relique Brown to get on the field and have a breakout game. But
Relique scored the touchdown.
He did.
And you can use him like that. So I want to see him at least get a few opportunities, and then we'll see if he breaks something.
Yeah, Jax says, do you think if the defense shows up like they did, that SC can win by 10 plus? I think it's possible. My prediction was 11. So, yeah, but this team is not capable of a blowout.
Yeah. Also, just remember that Drew Bine is not Cam Rising, so yeah, it's a different challenge.
Hector says, could Riley leave for the NFL after the? We're not going there. We're not going.
If I'm Lincoln Riley and I wanted to leave for the NFL, I would not have taken the USC job, because if Lincoln Riley
could have gotten any job that he wanted in the NFL
last year, if he wanted a job in the NFL, he could have gotten his job in the NFL. Yeah. No.
Down Panoy, what was the most riled up Alicia has gotten this season?
No, I think you were saying, was that the most riled up? It might be. Yeah.
Was it?
Maybe. I don't know.
All right.
Have I had good rants this year? I don't know.
Not as much as the classic years.
Not the classic,
sure. Josh says, do you think Whittingham has his excuse or reason for the loss, blaming the transfer portal?
No, I just think that guys like Whittingham and Shaw are sort of like of a different generation and just complaining.
And coaches are also going to look for whatever they can to motivate their guys.
Yeah.
And pretend that they're not the defending Pac-12 champion and get the chip on the shoulder, etc.
Yeah.
Orcolith says, does anyone bring up how the NFL teams benefit from the draft or trades?
Can you imagine? Yeah.
Let's go to a question for Dave the Greater. Do you really think we need names on the lower right-hand corner of your individual screens? You think the bots are that dumb? You never know.
Hey, Dave, we've got new viewers, new listeners. They might not know us.
The key to podcasting, they say, is remember that this is someone's first time ever listening to you.
Yes.
And someone has to look at my ugly face and decide if they're going to keep listening. So, unfortunately, we have to put it there. Then again, people like Alicia better. So maybe if I put Alicia on my thing, they would like me better.
Hey, I'm the one in the comments getting called not a true Trojan. So, questions there.
I mean,
I did go to Notre Dame.
You did go to Notre Dame, yeah. Josh says, how funny will it be when the Sooners 5-star receiver who just entered the portal ends up at SC?
I guess the question is, what receivers will USC accept from the portal? Because that's not always going to be the
SC
case.
is a million of them as it is, yeah.
And guys coming in as freshmen.
West Texas Mike says, if they print new jerseys of retired numbers, would I be able to bid on one of the old ones? I don't know, but that would be cool.
We need a backdrop in our studio here.
Who do we want? I
mean, number 11 for me, but I mean,
there's think about the. I'm not gonna say it. Not gonna say it. Not gonna say it. All right, let's end there. It's been an hour and 45 minutes. There's 150 of you still on. We appreciate you guys as always. Be sure to subscribe to the show. Like the stream. It helps grow the show as well. USC and Utah locking horns, 5 p.m. Big Fox on Friday night. And of course, we will be live after the game. And Alicia, what are we doing? We're going to do a Sunday show too. Should we do a rankings thing?
I think we should.
Should we do a live rankings thing like while the show is
No,
that'd be weird.
I will be working. So yeah, maybe not like a live thing, but we can do a reaction. We can probably just save it till Monday too, but we'll figure it out.
I don't know. West Texas, Mike, you might think that, but not what I was saying. Not what I was saying. All right, we'll be back next time. Until then, we'll be back Saturday night or Friday night with the Gartcast. So until then, see ya.
See ya.
Make your over under picks. We'll throw the link over in the show notes. So make your under over picks, folks. Until then, we'll see ya.